Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will discuss Chapter 8 of Freemasons for Dummies, Myths and Misconceptions about Masons.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual group of four hosts. We have Brother Craig Graham from Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. Very worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge in Kelowna, British Columbia. Sorry, forgot for a second there. Very worshipful Brother David Colbeth, who's a member of King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek number 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. So there's an area here which is rich with material, but only 6 pages long in the book here about the myths and misconceptions about Masonry. And I'll tell you my whole opinion right now, and it will boil down to the whole. We can just stop recording because it's obviously correct. It seems like most of the problems that people have about Masonry boil down to one of two things. One is we do things in private, which I would argue every human being does pretty much. There are things we do in private that we don't share with others. And two, that we are understanding of different religions and are willing to meet a brother from another religion and treat their religion as just as valid as our own. And there are groups of people of all religions who would say, the God of Maplewood Presbyterian Church is the God, and all the rest of y'all are going to HE double hockey sticks. So we can't be in the same room and refer to the grand architect of the universe. And in my opinion, that's, I would say, 98% of the problem that people have with Masonry right there. So thank you all. Good night. And we'll talk about Chapter 9 in our next episode. So,
if that were the only problem, Matt, we would not have a show.
Not even giving us a chance to segue down some weird alley tonight. we are never prone to do on this show.
Exactly. No, but seriously, yeah, there's several different more specific than my generalizations listed here. Does anyone have thoughts on the goats or the Baphomets or the?
Well, right in the very beginning, what you just kind of the opening, I had never heard the idea that we have orphanages so that we can have an endless supply of children for our. I don't know if I should say these words because they might flag our show.
I know where you're going, and I wasn't aware of those things either. I mean, we've all had those conversations with people who are obviously very opposed to this fraternity for a myriad of reasons. Although, like in Matt's introduction to this episode, an awful lot of times you can distill it down to very simple categories. And the one that I've always heard is generally some guy told me, or my dad told me, or someone I knew a long time ago said the Masons are into this, and this, and you don't really want to open the can of worms about really you believe them. Did you do any of your own fact checking? Because we've all had those conversations, and we know where they go.
And it's exasperated, as Matt talked about, that we're charged with keeping secrets or being secret about things, and really it's not about this being secret. It's about, can you keep a secret?
Yep.
Can I trust you?
Can I trust you? Do you protect the method by which we know each other a certain way? That's what it fundamentally boils down to. Yeah, and it's odd. The history of anti-Masonry is virtually as long as the fraternity itself. On day one, Freemasonry was created. On day two, somebody thought, "Oh, I don't like you guys. I don't really know why, but some guy told me you were into some really nefarious stuff." I mean, I always have to laugh when I hear, well, it's a secret society, and I thought, because I used to look up the Grand Lodge phone number in the phone book. And I thought, the assassins and the thuggy cult never listed themselves in the in the phone book. So and I've seen places where it was in the yellow pages with a little graphic attached to it. So I thought that's not really the hallmark of a secret society. If it was secret, you would, you being the non-member would not even know about it.
Yeah, right next to
yeah, we wouldn't have our license plates and etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, going back to what you were just saying, I've told this story on the pod before. The first time I was exposed to Masonry pretty much at all was when I was in high school, I got a scholarship award from the National Sojourners, which are a group of Masons who are military veterans. And we were at the award ceremony, and it was me and my parents. We were sitting at a round table, and I'm sure David knows there's a spiel or poem, recitation that some people do about the American flag, and here's to the red of it, the heroes bled for it, I don't know it, but here's to the blue of it, et cetera, et cetera. And I heard that and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I leaned over to my parents and I said, who are the Masons? And my parents said, they don't like Catholics. And that was the total of my exposure to. Now, years later, I can say
we do love Catholics.
Exactly.
It's the Catholics who have an issue with us.
Our Grand Master is Catholic.
and really, apparently, it's not really the Catholics; it's the Catholic Church. But it actually we had a brother who was very high up in the church, in the Catholic Church. I forget his title, but he had a title. He was very high up there, and he received a letter and he showed it to me. He actually was told he had to choose between the church and Freemasonry. And since then, there's been like members of the Knights of Columbus, and apparently it's in their whatever their rules that they're not supposed to become Freemasons either. However, I am picking up a petition on Monday from an active member of the Knights of Columbus, right? And in the 6-step program, I actually told him that you might want to go and check with the superiors first and see if there's any issues, because this is what I've been informed of, and that I don't want you to follow down this path only to find out that it's an issue for you to be a member of both organizations. And he went away, and a few weeks later came back and said that he had spoken with the guy in that's in charge in British Columbia, and that it's okay, it's his choice, right? And so but apparently
sure it is,
right? But and it is his choice whether or not they allow him back in there or not. I don't know, but he said to me in one of the meetings that we had was that as a young man, the Freemasons he had found out that the Freemasons had helped his mom, and where he's from, I don't want to say, but his mom had come into some difficult times, and the Freemasons were there and helped his mom and his family, and he has always been in the back of his mind that he would like to be part of that, and so that's one of his driving reasons to seek out us and membership in the organization. And then I explained to him that we're not a charity, and we're not, we don't typically put ourselves out there to do these things, but we do take care of one another, and if she was related to a Mason somehow, there's a pretty good chance that's why we were helping there. Or if it was made known to us that she was struggling and needed help, and we were able to, we would have helped, right? So, and he said, well, that was the important part to him. So, I thought that was pretty cool to hear and pretty cool to understand. But yeah, back to the Catholic Church. It was actually kind of devastating to my mind about that when Chris was forced to choose. He was a fantastic Mason, very active, very well read, and a wealth of knowledge, right? And so, yeah.
I wonder, Steve, not knowing virtually nothing about that situation, if it wasn't the church so much, if it was a particular individual somewhere that may have had an axe to grind with him that now had a way of leveraging.
No, this was a letter signed by like one of those archbishop guy type things,
Yeah.
and it was an official letter. He showed me the letter in the whole 9 yards.
Still, I can't help but think he was told on, like he was tattled for. I don't know. Like I said, I know nothing about the situation, but there's always oddball angles to it like that. Yeah.
Well, talking about confrontations and things, have you all ever been confronted by somebody? I can't say that I have specifically. I mean, there's people that have ideas about things, but I was curious if you were confronted, or if you have been confronted, did you address it directly, or did you just ignore it? He kind of alludes to that some people just ignore it and some people want to confront it. And I was curious what your experiences have been.
Speaking for myself, being the guy that meets all the seekers that come to our lodge, I've been, presented with a few different things, usually conspiracy theorists, and especially during COVID. Some of the seekers is like, why aren't you rising up? Why aren't you guys overturning the government? Why aren't you guys, fixing this problem? Right. And it's like, dude, we don't control the government. It's only the weather, man. And, but yeah, no, we're not in control of these things. So I don't know where you got these myths, this myth that we do these things. But he says, but you guys are all so powerful. And I said, yeah, no. I wish it was that way. The things I could do if I was all that powerful, but.
I once had it declared to me that Freemasonry was, how did it go? Luciferian, globalistic, and the light that Masons seek is satanic in nature. And that happened in a bookstore.
Wow.
I was asking at the counter if they had any books on Freemasonry, and somebody approached me and said, excuse me, I understand you're looking for books on Freemasonry. Do you know much about it? And I thought, okay, I know where this is going. And I just went into smile and nod mode. And it's kind of like when you're confronted with, you find yourself in a conversation with somebody that you didn't realize their politics were quite as extreme as they've turned out to be. And you're just like, okay, I'm looking for an off-ramp here, and we'll just smile and nod and work our way through it. And he ended up by saying, if everything about Freemasonry is so good, why is it secret? And I thought, okay, there's no fixing this situation here. And I was too young and not savvy enough about things to really sort of provide a suitable defense. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I would really engage with a person like that now anyways, because what am I going to say in 5 minutes that's going to change probably years and years of this sort of opinion?
Yeah, that's kind of my default as well, is just to let them carry on with their own beliefs and ideas. And unless they're in my sphere of somehow, and even then, it's not worth my mind trouble or brain trouble to have to try to defend something like that.
Yeah. So. And then as a good friend of mine pointed out, one of the problems, because my friend is not a Mason, but he's dealt with people. He's quite active politically, and he's dealt with people who've come up with obvious anti-Masonic opinions, and my friend has said, one of the problems with that is you start down the road of anti-Masonry, and pretty quickly you're now into anti-Semitism, because there's often a link in conspiratorial minded people between the Freemasons and the Jews, and it's just that's a very unfortunate and completely untrue situation, but it's one that's very, very common. I mean, that sort of philosophy propelled the Nazis to power, and it's like a bad smell. It just keeps coming back again and again. Yeah.
It is sad that those kind of thoughts and so are somehow connected, or in anybody's mind. If they, but I guess they do that with other things too, with other religions and other beliefs and things. And so we're not the only organized concept, organized idea power that has those problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, speaking of misconceptions, go ahead, Matt. Oh, I saw you were going to say something, Matt. Go ahead. Sorry. No, please.
I was just going to try and move us on to other misconceptions, but yeah.
There you go. Go for it.
Yep. So there you go. There are no other misconceptions. We're good. I mean, in one of my opinion, sillier ones that's mentioned in here is the goat thing. I know I've seen postcards, images of old postcards with, guys riding the goat or whatever. And I've heard of people making jokes about it and making like goat sounds during degrees and that sort of stuff. Luckily, I've never witnessed it because that would really tick me off. But it's
sorry.
Exactly.
Out there.
All right. We need another new host.
I actually use that one for a particular reason. I don't use the goat as per se, but every seeker, when they show up for their night of initiation, I tell them that I give them the one instruction I give them is that they must bring a carrot and put it in their left chest pocket, stick it out of their left chest pocket. And that's how I expect to see them show up at the lodge, right? And of course, the night goes on, and then eventually they say, well, what's the carrot for? I don't see the goat. I said, it's not for the goat. There's no goat here, right? And they said, well, why am I supposed to bring a carrot? It's just really to see if you follow instructions. Test number 1. And you passed, right?
My father came from a very, very small town in Manitoba. And he always joked with me. He said, "Oh, you off to, I'd be putting my suit on to go to lodge when I was still living at home." And he'd be like, "Oh, you're off to ride the billy goat tonight, aren't you?" And that was when they were kids growing up in this little town in Manitoba after the war. That was the joke was they kept a billy goat. And I knew a South African woman who said, "Oh, all the Masons go to lodge and play bok, which is an Afrikaans word for like goat ball." And so it's if that came up in Manitoba and South Africa, this thing's gone worldwide. I'm sure there's Russian and Asian versions of the billy goat in lodge as well. So I don't know where it started. I think he alludes to it a little bit in the book, but yeah, it's that one's well rooted.
Yeah, I had never heard the story about how that. Suppose the witches and whatever had ridden a goat into town to attend their events.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say what the book says. And so, yeah, I guess I had never heard that piece of it. And so I didn't know that was any way connected to that symbol or that myth in our process. He talks in the next section about the initials for Grand Architect of the Universe that can be, I guess it used to be called the God of all things. I had never heard that either necessarily. Initials GOAT. And so that may have led to the idea of the goat, but I don't know.
Yeah, I still prefer greatest of all time, but that usually seems reserved for sporting events. So,
Okay, so maybe this is where they get it, right? You see, the next myth in the chapter goes on about the all-seeing eye on the U.S. dollar bill, right? And so maybe that's where most people think that we actually rule the world because we can have our all-seeing eye on the U.S. dollar, right?
And there's some very good explanations for that myth there too, because it talks about, the triangle has got three sides, so it's the Trinity and things like that. But yeah, they and then of course he references the movies too, because people have had they I actually had a friend of mine tell me he was interviewing someone for a job, and someone held up a US dollar bill and said it's all on the dollar bill here. Everything that's in control of the world is on the dollar. So that's another one that's well rooted.
Yeah, I was this many years old when I actually paid attention to two things. One, I guess I never actually looked to see that it was just a simple triangle and not the top of the pyramid. I just always guess made that assumption that triangle with the all-seeing eye was actually the top of the pyramid, and it wasn't just a separate piece. I didn't know that specifically. And I want to say I remember that I heard that it was 13 levels to the pyramid, but I don't know that I had ever for sure heard that either. When I read it, I went, oh, I didn't know there was 13 to allude to the 13 colonies. I hadn't paid that much attention, apparently. Even an old man can learn new tricks.
I tell you, haven't been paying attention. They're all around, man.
Yes. I
haven't been paying attention.
It is interesting to think that those symbols, of course, have been used for ages and ages. It's not something new. That's something that somebody came up with necessarily. But they just put things together, which is kind of what Freemasonry is all about. We just kind of put things together, put ideas together, and in a different format to use them for other purposes. So,
well, I think it's something he mentioned in there about the goat there being used as a proxy symbol for the devil, and it also appears on a lot of heavy metal album covers over the years too. Usually suffused with a upside down pentacle or pentagram or something like that.
Yep.
There's a lot of this stuff is very, very deeply rooted.
Yeah, it is, and there's more of it coming. So I think it's about time for us to start wrapping up for this episode, so that we can squeeze the juice out of a few more of these crazy theories. So, as always, we enjoy hearing from you and your comments on our episodes and stuff on YouTube or Spotify, or I just got paid Spotify. It's so exciting now. I don't have to listen to the commercials. It's just great. We appreciate hearing from our listeners always, and look forward to hearing from you soon. And with that, thank you all for listening, from myself and Craig and Stephen and David. And thank you for listening to the Working Tools Podcast. Goodbye.